It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's October. Horror boys. Horror boys. And occasionally a romantic comedy here or there.
I'm just really scared that something bad is going to happen. Rose.
Yes, today we have a double feature review because these two are going to be similar in terms of my opinion, but also thematically they're different. So I thought it'd be a fun little beginning of October juxtaposition. But here, for the first one, we have Smile. So I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the trailer for Smile, I'm like, truth or dare already did this, didn't they? And it looked cheesy and corny and like it'd just be jump scare central, but I got some thoughts about it. So first of all, Smile is directed by a Parker Finn. This is his directorial debut. He's done some short films beforehand, but like I've said in previous reviews, I don't know if it's just because I'm noticing it more, but 2022 seems to be the year of directorial debuts. In terms of the star power, I didn't make this connection until I did the research after the fact. So our star Scream Queen, psycho crazy, trying to maintain her sanity and life lady is Sosie Bacon, daughter of Kevin Bacon, funny enough. You don't know who Kevin Bacon is? How's life under that rock? I guess you could say most notably, I only know this because my mom talks about how good the show is. She has a large filmography, but in terms of like, oh, it's dark and dreary and thematic and probably good. Evidently, she's in Mayor of Easton? The other actors you could bring up, I find it hilarious that the A-Train's in this. Can't stop the A-Train, baby. So I'm not gonna lie, getting into Smile, I tried to go in with moderate expectations. I actually accidentally caught a glimpse of the review before I went in. By review, I mean the Rotten Tomatoes average score, and it was favorable, and I was shocked. So I was like, okay, there might be something more to this. Let's honestly try to go in with an open mind. This movie's a lot better than its trailer, and that makes me happy. I like seeing a mediocre or like, okay, even a shitty trailer, and the movie actually being much better than it. Marketing for Smile has been pretty good though. Like, I like how they had people smiling at baseball games and shit. Like, it's fun marketing like that to bring attention to your film. Society lacks a lot of that. I like the cold open a lot. There have been several horror or thriller, mostly horror films this year that try to do something cool or scary or creative with their cold opens, and they didn't cut the mustard for MovieMan. But this, I think, overall, pretty solid. Uneasy build, and then I liked it. It was good. It kind of brought the movie in with a bang, so it sets the tone for the film, I think, fairly well. I will say, though, there is a caveat to this that I'll address in a moment. The lead, Sosie, she plays crazy and hysterical, or like going crazy. She plays that very well. Whether it's breaking down, looking terrified, acting scared, trying to be brave, be resourceful, all the usual stuff. She's already a good actor. It's so easy to miscast or to put someone in who just, screams a lot and kind of can cry like that or runs around. But no, she did a very good job. She played fearful and hysterical very well. Honestly, solid direction. There's some good jump scares. There's some cliche jump scares, but mostly good jump scares. And I don't know, the camera work used throughout was stable, it was good, it sometimes revealed just enough, it made scenes really creepy. There were the occasional weird like Dutch angles here and there, or I guess Dutch tilt for you film buffs out there, and sometimes the director would play around with doing some like upside down shots here and there. Doesn't use it too much, but I think when he does use it, it's to good effect. So props there for making your movie visually enticing enough. And the music, I gotta say, the soundtrack in a lot of it is genuinely unnerving and is creative. Not just it wasn't a stereotypical run-of-the-mill like very basic orchestral score. Like, this was creative, and there were sounds and plinkings and plonkings, and hard to describe, but the soundtrack used throughout Smile actually fitted shockingly well and really helped to accentuate the fear in some scenes. And then other scenes, they did what I love that people do, is that you don't worry about the music. You let the environment speak for itself. The shallow panicked breaths, the sound design, I hear a fucking voice and it's like, oh my god, fucking you get the goosebumps and it's just fucking quiet until a jump scare comes along. But still, fear and horror in a film, especially when it comes to jump scares, is driven oftentimes auditory, which is why that if you like watch a movie and you cover your ears, jump scares probably won't get you as hard. Though I will say it is worth noting, there are some scenes in this film that I genuinely almost didn't want to look at. Like, not to say they were gross, but in terms of scary, I was just like, ooh, it's creepy. Oh, and I'm like, oh my god, that's unsettling. And it takes a lot to get me to get like to kind of shy away, but like there's kind of some scary stuff. I'm not gonna lie, it was just unsettling. There are some faults and flaws I definitely wanted to bring up. Not a lot though. Some of the actors in this, their delivery is a bit stiff. I know I bring that up a lot. I know it might seem like a nitpick. All the main actors that matter, they all do a good job. It's the other ones that just kind of like stiff and a bit weird delivery that kind of like de-escalates that. But it's barely worth mentioning, but at the same time, I mean, you gotta mention it, right? In a movie called Smile, about whatever this smile thing is, it permeates the film, but there's not, I don't know, I felt like there could have been more of it. But for a movie that had like an R rating and for the cold open to be what it was, I don't know, maybe I was expecting a little bit more than there was. I don't know, almost expecting more violence and more gruesomeness and more darkness. But I mean, I guess it's more like whatever this entity or thing is, it's more about the mind games of it all. So I guess I can see that. I put in my notes pandemonium, if that makes any sense. I thought things were going to give it a bit more balls to the wall. Maybe not like Malignant or anything, but like I just thought it would get a little bit more crazy, but they kind of showed restraint, which in a way is good, I suppose. I think really my biggest complaint with this particular film is it's a personal pet peeve I have when it comes to thrillers and horror movies, and that's, you have your protagonist, and in this case she's like a therapist, right? So in terms of psychology, human psychology, how that all works, she knows, like she gets it, like she literally helps counsel people that act the way that she inevitably ends up acting. So when these things first start happening to her and she's not sure what's going on, she's a little bit unsettled, but she keeps her composure, keeps it together for like the first 20 minutes. And then when she's like, oh my god, there might be something evil, nefarious, or something otherworldly going on, she kind of loses it, like that. It just kind of goes from like, oh, now first she was spooked and had some like little bit of trauma there, and now she's going hysterical, she's terrified, she's making herself look and sound crazy. And I get that. I mean, people that are scared, I mean, they'll act scared. From a plot standpoint, it didn't quite track for me that the therapist who counsels people psychologically wasn't trying to like counsel herself. It's a pet peeve of mine in movies, because like, whenever you're trying to get help and you're trying to convince somebody you're not crazy, acting crazy and doing and saying crazy things is like the furthest thing. You want to separate yourself from that shit. You want to come across as sane, just as normal as possible, and she does the exact opposite. And understandably, it freaks people out and they don't want to believe her. And it's just a pet peeve of mine in films. I wish that there was more lore. I wish we got to like learn more. We got to learn about the patterns and like how it was happening, but never origin or why or anything like that. Just all the questions that I wanted answered weren't answered. So if you want to see a film like this, but you really want to see a film that's even better, I could recommend both Babadook, mainly because, well, for one, Babadook's a phenomenal film, but it deals with a similar subject matter of bending that line between what is a supernatural horror thriller and what is a psychological drama, and what can be like what actually is happening versus what's in the protagonist's head. Or even, like I've mentioned it a couple times before, It Follows, in terms of just it's a very similar premise, but I think It Follows executes it so much better. But all things said and done, I think Smile, it was better than I thought it was going to be. I'd say it's average, worth your time, maybe even go see it in theaters. I think it's worth a watch, honestly, which is why I would give Smile a very, very solid 3 out of 5. Give Smile a 3 out of 5. Almost tempted to give it a high 3, but I wanted to see more, and I wanted to see our protagonist act with a bit, at least pretend to have a bit more sanity than what she was losing in the film. If you want a realistic depiction of a descent into sanity, I always love referencing Stephen King's Pet Sematary. You have a character who is very much on the level. He gets to a certain point more than halfway through the book where you're with him, right? You keep following the character, and then you realize at one point you're like, oh wait, no, this guy's lost it. But the way that he's interacting with people and the way that he's rationalizing things in his head and how he's handling things, he makes it seem like it makes sense, and it's handled very well. I just don't like it when people are like, boom, crazy. Then of course, as a palate cleanser, we finished Smile and we went over to...
My whole life, I've prided myself on being self-reliant, but this guy has gone into my head.
Maybe you're both bottoms and that's the problem.
Bottom day.
Yeah. Gay sex was more fun when straight people were uncomfortable with it.
Bros. Now, Bros is a movie that I saw the trailer for several times in theaters, and I thought the trailer looked good, if not a bit cheesy. And I like how there's a romantic comedy, but it's like a gay romantic comedy. I don't think like cinema in general has enough representation in that regard. I always love seeing foreign films, films of color, films representing different sexual identities and identities in general and all that. Bros is directed by a Nicholas Stoker, whose filmography ranges from a classic such as Forgetting Sarah Marshall to a more recent animated film from a few years back, but he did Storks as well, so it's kind of funny, but clearly the director has been in the rom-com world before. In terms of the stars, the main one, obviously, that's like really driving this film is Billy Eichner. Here's the thing, I know he's been in other stuff, but I've really only ever known him. Oh, it's the guy from those fucking clips of Billy on the Street. I'm not a fan of Billy on the Street. Objectively, it's funny. I get that. It's just not my style. I never was entertained too much by the clips. I get the appeal. We have our love interest, Luke McFarlane, which I hate to say this because he looks like, generic hot stud. I almost thought he was the guy from Umbrella Academy, honestly. But in terms of his filmography, it's all generic ABC family looking ass shows and movies that just... You would just scroll through it on your way to find the actual thing you're trying to watch. It's a shame, because I think he could have potential. Similar to Smile, I liked Bros more than I thought I would. Is it the most hilarious movie of the year? Is it the best, comedy of the year? Some people are saying it's up there. I think the ratings speak to that as well, but I don't think it was balls to the wall, pun intended, hilarious, but it was really good. The lead can be a bit overbearing. I get it. It's it's the personality of, I assume the actual actor, but it's that character, and it's just, him being himself. I got no qualms with that. I'm just saying one of my cons to the film, which I guess I'm getting to right now, is that in the first 5 minutes, for me personally, it was a little bit of sensory overload. I don't often get sensory overload, but this man goes a mile a minute. And when it comes to, I've learned a lot of things about public speaking over the years, and I used to talk, whenever I was doing read-throughs, when I was talking myself, I used to talk like the wind. I talked so fast, I slurred and stuttered more than I already do these days. And you learn some things about public speaking. You lose people's attention if you start talking too fast, too wild and all over the place. You want to keep some concise points. You can have energy. You can be yourself and put that into what you're talking about. But in my personal experience with public speaking, with my limited social media and oratory presence, I know what I've learned. So it was just a little bit much for me. But don't let the first 5 minutes discourage you. I mostly liked him though in this film. I liked both leads, honestly. I wasn't sure if I would like Billy Eichner's character, but no, he's likable, he's lovable, he's human. They're both very human, and I appreciate them showing the vulnerability and being able to show that men, whether you're gay, straight, or plus any of that jazz, it's everybody is human, and we all have our vulnerabilities, and we all have our wants and our needs and what drives us and what hurts us and all that. And they touch on all of that in this film. There were definitely a couple scenes where I got pretty misty-eyed. I emotionally connected to the plight of some of the characters. They've suffered significantly greater hardships than I have, but still there were some emotional connections, and this movie did make me feel both happy but also very melancholy. I think most of the jokes and commentary work because in addition to the comedy, they are trying to make they are trying to include some pretty heavy commentary on society and how LGBTQ+ are kind of viewed and treated. And since they're all talking to each other about it, they're very candid about it, and I appreciate that because it made it feel more human and more natural. Like they weren't trying to have the PC police like, oh, we got to make sure the dialogue tests well with our focus groups. No, they have some like wild conversations in this. Some of the commentary, a little bit on the nose, but sometimes it feels less like a movie. And there's a few small sequences and sections where I'm like, okay, now we're on a soapbox. I get it. I'm here for it, but we're also still watching a movie. Not all the comedy works. Most of the comedy works. It's a very funny film. But there's just, again, comedy is subjective from my preferences and all that, and from what I view to be funny. I laughed throughout most of this film, but there were some jokes where I was just like, ooh, like, no. And then Billy Eichner, it's a shame, because he has some solid emotional moments, and there's some great scenes he's in. And then in the middle of some of these scenes, his delivery goes from, like, swift and flowing and emotional to a random, like, wooden delivery and a stiff line read. And it's just weird, and, like, they kept these takes. I can tell he's got good acting chops in him. His delivery isn't fully consistent throughout the entire film. But there's also like a weird couple of scenes when they're shifting into the third act and the climax of the film. I get why we had the gym sequence, but it seemed, given the flow of the narrative, like between that sequence and when he has his breakdown at the museum, it just seemed very sudden. This is him blowing up, but like, I don't know, it took me out of the film. The transition from the end of Act 2 to the beginning of Act 3 wasn't smooth for me, and it was just jarring enough where I was like, man, this is really kind of weird right now. I know I said soapbox earlier, but don't get me wrong, the film isn't preachy in the traditional sense, but sometimes it just leans into itself a little bit too much. But overall, like I said, Bros is actually really good. I would go see it again. I think I might end up seeing it again with a friend who missed it the first time, but worth it in theaters, support it for sure. I mean, it's good. Did I love it? No, I didn't love it. It's better than I thought it'd be. I think it's worth your time. I'm glad that it's getting the high reviews that it's getting online, but I don't fully agree with that. For those reasons, and probably more, I give Bros a very high 3 out of 5. And honestly, you could probably talk me into a low 4, maybe upon a subsequent watch. That's all I got for today. I'm glad that October is here. I reviewed my first horror film and a romantic comedy, but hopefully more horror films to be reviewed as we go on. That was both Smile and Bros. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review next. And goodbye, travelers.